Tom, welcome to Caught in the Middle, episode 2. T-Jump, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I've caught up a lot about Tom with modern day debates, especially, and here recently I've been tuning into your own stream and just listening to you talk to the masses.
I do that, but you probably should not take anything James says seriously, because if you do, then I will be the son of Steve McRae, the brother of Kent Hovind, and the cousin of Matt Dillahunty. So it's probably not the best genealogy you're going to get from James.
Yeah, I know on a couple of the streams there, he was saying that your father was in the commenting section.
Yeah.
And I was trying to understand whether your father was actually there or if it was just James, playing jokes.
Yep, just James doing the James.
So, Tom, I watch a lot of your stuff. Obviously, I'm watching modern day debates. So, a lot of times, you're on the opposite end of all kinds of topics, ranging from, religion, atheism versus all kinds of stuff, mainly Islamic and Christian folks. And then I watched a lot of your stuff with the flat earthers versus, you're always the glober because the earth is round.
Are you telling me I should do more flat earth debates from the flat earth side? Like
I'm not sure it's in you. I'm not sure it's in you, man. I think everything I see, you're generally speaking from an evidence based viewpoint. It looks like, you're going with what would be the science. And then my camera decides to go out again. It looks like you're going with the science. You're constantly bringing in peer-reviewed stuff, and so I'm not sure it's in you to be on the flat side.
I did do a mock debate on Discord once as a flat earther against some people who joined my Discord and didn't know who I was. That was fun.
Yeah, I have to try to find that one and check it out.
So what do you want to talk about? Stuff.
So, Tom, you're obviously a globe earther, as they might call you, a quote unquote globe tard. I'm also a globe earther. I want to make that clear. I do believe the Earth is an oblique spheroid, I think is the correct terminology. Oblate. There we go. I do believe that. However, obviously we just spoke about you being an evidence-based person. And generally speaking, when I'm watching the flat earthers, they're speaking from, generally there's a lot of religious philosophy behind where they're coming from. However, as strongly as they seem to believe in their stuff, do you think there's any middle ground with these guys?
What do you mean by middle ground?
So I would think, I have to imagine, I attempt to believe in the vast majority of humanity, attempt. So I have to think that a lot of them are coming out of good faith. I have to try to convince myself of this at times because sometimes it gets a little bit wild. However, I have to believe that maybe they're coming from a point of distrusting government. And then they're kind of falling down a very deep rabbit hole. And from my standpoint, I would say that there are various avenues we might travel down where there is some strong distrust in government. And reasons why there might be things that, maybe have been admitted to that would be, factually based and whatnot. So I would have to think that they started at one point. Maybe they got A and B, quote unquote, correct. And then they kind of skipped straight to Z. What would you think about that?
Maybe it's definitely possible, but I usually don't psychologize people. I really don't care what their motivation is. I usually pay attention to their arguments, and that's really the only thing that interests me. Why they came to them doesn't make, I really couldn't care less.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it's hard to find some middle ground then, and honestly, when I'm trying to do that personally, specifically in this instance with the flat earthers, um, within the argument itself, I've noticed that some of them, I would say most of them are extreme enough, um, that there isn't any middle ground within the argument itself.
What do you mean? Like, so they won't give any ground? You mean like they won't concede anything?
Yeah, they don't seem to want to concede on anything. Um, Even in various points where it might be clear, um, that they're wrong in that exact point. It doesn't seem they want to give any ground there. They're going to stick straight to exactly what they said. They're going to become immovable.
I guess most of them are probably like that, but I think that many of the ones I've talked to have been willing to give ground. You just have to explain it to them in a way that's simple enough for them to understand, which is the trick, because they have a lot of preconceptions that make it hard for them to understand things. And so I think that to get them to be able to understand basic concepts is the difficult process, and you have to learn how to speak their language in order to get them to agree. And I think that that's really the bigger issue, is that they're not going to concede things if you're using your worldview and your language. In order to get them to understand, you have to use their worldview and their language. The same thing with theists and anybody you're talking to. If you want to actually convince them successfully, you need to be able to speak their language, and trying to convince them by you using your favored terminology is probably not going to work.
Okay, okay, yeah, I think that might be true as well. I think, yeah, I could go with that. So, Tom, also, I believe it might be safe to say you're a strong atheist.
Yep.
And so by that, I'm gonna say that that would mean you have no beliefs religiously, spiritually, mystically, anything in between. Very strong science.
Sort of, but I wouldn't say that's the same as strong atheism. Strong atheism is just the position God doesn't exist. And there are many strong atheists who do believe in spirituality, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So it isn't entailed by strong atheism, even though I do not believe in any of those things as well.
Okay. Okay. So with like, I guess it's easiest to speak on the Christians and Muslims, being that they're the most common, in between Islamic folks. Excuse my language if I've offended anyone there. Don't mean to. Um, Again, I always fall back on this hopefully good faith, that I think that these people mean well for the most part. Um, have you ever been in an instance where you might find some type of common ground, or you know, hey, even though I don't believe in what this individual is saying, maybe we might be able to meet somewhere.
Again, it kind of depends on what you mean by common ground. Like, most of us agree on the laws of logic: A equals A does not equal not A, that kind of thing. We agree that the world is flat for the most part. So there's lots of things that we agree upon. Um, and so it depends on what your goal is, of what you're trying to convince them to agree to. Like, if you're trying to convince them God doesn't exist, no, they're not going to accept that. Definitely, not going to do that. But you can get them to accept certain scientific facts usually pretty easily.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd like to think that my common ground, what I would like to believe are most, specifically, Christian and Islamic folks, um, might be that I think they're coming from good morals, maybe. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, so on and so forth. Maybe not the idle one, but I mean, those are good things. Those are good things. You shouldn't steal from people. You shouldn't murder people, so on and so forth. I think that
You
that's
can have that opinion. That's fine. It's all right.
yeah. I think that again, it falls back on what I would say are common human characteristics, what we're supposed to have. Don't do bad things to people. Leave people alone in this instance.
Sure, I think most people typically share some basic moral framework, moral realists. So I think that, yeah, there is some objective morality out there, and some people are closer to that than others. And generally, as society moves forward, everybody becomes more moral slowly.
The opposition generally, when we go into topics of these things, the opposition seems to be in maybe the historical quote unquote facts. Probably shouldn't put that in facts, or quotes, but the facts behind slavery being involved, slavery being pushed, maybe brought a little further. Well, it never should have existed in the first place. Hopefully, maybe it had its uses at times, but it doesn't make it correct. And then maybe their viewpoints that are pressed on maybe the LGBTQ plus community and whatnot, right?
And drowning babies, God tended to do that. He sent bears to kill people. That's also a thing. I'm not for bear murder. Turning people to salt for looking in the wrong direction. Yeah, there's a lot of things that religious beings did that are immoral. And I think that the major problem there is the fact that the books are very vague. And there's lots of very vague terminology in the several thousand pages of it that can be interpreted in many different ways. It's kind of like a deepity. A deepity is a statement that seems very profound, but actually isn't contained in it. And those kind of statements, all they do is, because they're so vague, is that the person reading them is going to read into them their own worldview, their own values. And so even though the statement has multiple interpretations, multiple ways you can read it, what you're going to get out of it is essentially a reflection of your own nature. And so you're going to see the thing that you want to see, the thing that's most important to you, which makes it seem profound when it's really not, without you considering the alternative interpretations. And that's why people, when they see slavery in the Bible, they tend to interpret that as being some kind of caste system thing that was done in order to help people get out of poverty or whatever, and saying, oh, it was good slavery or whatever, when really there is no such thing. And so I think that people's biases cause them to interpret things in the most convenient way for their worldview, and that motivated reasoning is evolutionarily very good for people to look for information that supports their ideas, but isn't very scientific or rational in any way, which leads to a lot of different interpretations of especially vague statements that are pretty much makes them useless for any kind of meaningful lifestyle.
Right. So when we say rationally speaking, I think that in some instances, these folks, they go to their church or temple or mosque or whatever they may attend. Maybe there's those hair raising moments by the pastor, speaker, deacon, whoever's speaking at that time, whatever they may address them as. Those hair raising moments to give them the goosebumps. And they're feeling pretty strongly emotionally attached to what that person's saying. Do you think that there's any rationale towards that?
Rationale. Well, it's evolutionary, so there's evolutionary advantages to religion, lots of them, which is why it's so common. Like evolution, a religion has a massive benefit of reducing stress by being a part of a community, by feeling accepted, by helping you deal with fear, cope with terror. There's lots of studies on this. Like there's one done in like the Lebanese War or whatever, where people would pray, and if they prayed, they felt less stressed from being bombed. Obviously, prayer has zero impact on whether or not you're going to be hit by a missile, but it makes people feel better because of this thing called the placebo effect.
Right.
And the placebo effect lowers your stress level, lowers your cortisol, and with high levels of cortisol, it shuts down your immune system. And so these stress releasing techniques actually help you to literally be healthier because it allows your immune system to function more. And so things like a lucky rabbit's foot or a four-leaf clover or tying a piece of Bible around your neck will give people confidence, which will help their immune system to be function better because of the lower cortisol levels, which will help them to be healthier, stave off sickness, function more. And prayer and things will help them to cope with fear and terror more, which will help them to get back into society. So if someone dies in the family, if you have some religious belief in an afterlife, you're more likely to faster recover from those kinds of traumatic situations and be able to go back into the workforce. And so, from an economic perspective, having beliefs in the afterlife are beneficial economically. There was a study done that showed pictures of dead bodies to people and measured their emotional response to these dead bodies. And people who had a strong belief in the afterlife were less emotionally distraught by looking at the images. So there's lots of evolutionary reasons why people believe this, and it's kind of like an illusion, a placebo effect of a psychological nature that helps to give us emotional comfort, that helps us to function better in life. And so I guess that's a rationale in some way.
Yeah, I think I could agree with well, everything you just said. Uh,
It's the moral of the story. T-Jump is right, always right.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. T-Jump's typically right when I'm watching you there. Um, Again, if you speak from a quote unquote fact-based standpoint, evidence backed, and yeah. So I would say that's generally correct in my book. Um, okay, so let's keep on this religious topic for a minute. So we know that, well, we don't know pretty much anything. But speaking archaeologically and what we view in history, it would seem like all the way back into, you know, maybe the Neanderthal days. We have these drawings or this cave art and all these different things, and it would seem like all the way back into these points, people had their religious ideologies, something that as you just put it, might alleviate them or give them some
Terror
something.
management is what it's called. Terror management theory.
Terror management theory. I'm gonna have to look in it. Is that an actual theory
Yep,
or?
it's an actual theory of in the study of religion, the origin of religion. There's several different theories. Terror management theory is one of them. Wartime theory is another one and it's also a version of terror management because they're managing the terror of war. There are many different theories like that on the emotional benefits of religion and how it started.
Okay, I think that's something that hits me. That keeps me on the spiritual, pagan-esque area of religion personally. Is that a lot of these cultures, historically and archaeologically, seem to closely align. It seems like there's typically a sun god. There's the moon has meaning, planets have meanings, so on and so forth.
Well,
And
why do
from
you think
culture,
that is? Why do you think there's no proton gods or neutron gods or electron
oh
gods?
yeah, oh yeah. I don't think that they acknowledged it. They didn't know about any of that.
Right. So, like, if there's
easily.
a bunch of societies that all see a big shiny thing in the sky, it makes sense that they're going to associate a god with that thing, not because there's actually a god there, but because that's what they can see. Like, I think it would be good evidence of gods if people were making proton gods thousands of years before we knew of protons. Then, yeah, that would be great evidence of some kind of a proton god because nobody could have known about that. But so it'd be very strange that a whole bunch of different societies would come up with an idea of this god thing that they had no evidence for that was all the same and then corresponded to something in reality that we never knew about. But them all having sun gods or wisdom gods or fire gods, not very surprising.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that catches me um, is that it would seem like all the way from the Aztecs into the Hellenistic folks into the quote unquote Norse folks, into the Germanic peoples, so on and so forth. It seems like worldwide, the one that catches me a bit is that there is always this one-eyed guy. There's always a one-eyed guy that happens to be at the top of the food chain, and I've always kind of wondered why it is that it's always a god or goddess with one eye. How did people that I don't think could communicate across the globe? How did they all come up with the one-eyed guy?
Because they have wars and people who survive with one eye. Old, usually like the oldest people in the culture, the leaders are usually people with like one eye or battle scars from their earlier childhood who run the society now. And so the old guy with one eye is like the leader of the representative society. Battle scars, wisdom from their experience. It's all just human nature to look at the people who lead the societies and what traits do they have. They have damage, like a battle eye, lost eye, or whatever. They're old, and so those are the ones who are the most wise. And so you extrapolate that to the universe and say, well, who's going to be the most wise of the universe? Probably some old guy with some battle damage.
Right. Where do you think that a lot of these cultures, seem to come up with the idea of the globe or the universe, or however each one interprets it? There always seems to be someone holding it up. You think that comes from lack of understanding of space
Gravity.
and gravity and whatnot?
Well, the world seems flat. Most people thought the world was flat until about 3,000 years ago, 2 to 3,000 years ago. Like, it was the early Romans who first discovered the world was round. So before that, it just looks flat. And so if it looks flat, it's pretty natural to ask, well, what's it on? Like, even the flat earthers today, they ask, well, what's on the earth? What's the holding the earth up? And it was like water or something. And so the fact that other cultures asked the same question said it's probably a big guy holding it up. It probably has to
Or
do with,
turtle?
or turtle, yeah. It's to do with type 1 and type 2 errors. Type 1 and type 2 errors are the hyperactive agency detection system, where if you hear a rustle in the bushes and you think it's a lion, you run away and you survive. If you're super scientific and be like, nah, I'm going to wait for more evidence and withhold judgment, then you get eaten by the lion more often. And so that mindset gets weeded out. The strict scientific mindset is less evolutionarily advantageous. And so most people have been given this disposition to think agency in everything. And so we look at the something we don't understand. Why is the world not falling in on itself, or why is the sun moving? And say agent did it, just like because lion. So
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that back that up. I think that from my standpoint, I think what separates me from many is that I don't tell anyone to believe what I'm believing. I don't tell them how to believe what I'm believing. I don't tell them that what I'm saying is backed up by much of anything except feelings and
you're bad
you
at
know.
proselytizing.
Yeah. I won't. I spoke with James, and James would throw uh, various things. I mean, he says he has a hard time finding pagan versus atheist, and I find myself, if I was not pagan, or what modern day people title as pagan, I would be an atheist. So I find myself too closely aligning with them to be able to debate against it. There's too many fact based, and I say fact because at the moment those are facts. The subject to change, everything is. Um, but at the moment, I find myself more fact based aligned, and I have to be honest. When I'm going to debate something, I have to feel like I'm being truthful, or I'll run out of things to say pretty quickly.
For sure. I
So,
think that's a strange position that I hold that many atheists don't hold, is that I think it's fine to believe in anything. You have faith or whatever, and whatever you want. Don't really care. I think it's only irrational to believe you have evidence for something you don't have evidence for. So, like Christians say they have evidence, they don't. They're irrational because they believe they have all these good evidence for Jesus. It doesn't exist. So they're irrational, not because they believe in Jesus, but because they believe they have evidence for Jesus. That's not the case. And so, like, I believe in objective morality. I believe I am the sexiest, smartest man alive. I don't have evidence of this, but I don't care. I don't claim to have evidence of this, so it's not an irrational belief.
yeah, I could definitely see that.
Thank you.
Um,
I know I'm sexy and smart. I know
yeah, I don't know about that part, man. You
what
got me on
what
the other side over here. The wife might disagree, and I'm gonna hold her opinion. I'll keep my head held high on that one. You do have a sexy chair, though. This chair gets commented on quite a lot.
It's true. It's true.
I
Give
I
me
have a nice chair over here, though.
five
If I
thousand
could
dollars.
zoom
You
out
can
the
spend it. You
camera.
can sit in the chair. Spend a day in the chair.
Yeah, I actually dug your chair. It's one of the things that me and the wife were talking about it. I'm like, look, I need a comfortable chair. I don't want one of these gaming chairs. I get,
Yeah, well, this is not a
butt starts
gaming chair.
hurting in.
There are no gaming chairs like this. This is a lazy boy. This is a lazy boy Crandall recliner. It's a 6-foot chair. It's amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I've got the big nice cushions on here and some nice armrests.
Like,
Big
if you were to
blankets
guess,
all
how
over.
tall do you think I am sitting in this chair?
Uh, I'm gonna say 5'10", 5'11".
I'm
It's pretty
6'2".
average. 6'2".
This is
My goodness.
a big chair.
Were you a basketball guy?
Nope. I played in like grade school. I did high school. I did football and chess, and now I'm a chess coach.
Chess coach.
It
Okay.
pays amazing. It's such an like I get paid like $50 to $80 for an hour. Chess teaching.
Wow.
Ridiculous.
So what kind of tell me a little bit about that. I've never heard of a chess coach before. I knew they existed. I just never met one. What kind of stuff goes into that?
Well, so I teach elementary school kids. So mostly I'm like, so this piece moves like this. You move the pawn forward, try to take the middle of the board. Don't sack your queen. And that's about it. That's all I got to do.
Okay, so it's not like some of this. I've watched some anime in the past. A lot of Naruto, and there's a guy, and his mentor, his quote unquote master, and then his dad, and they play a lot of chess together. And shogi,
yeah,
yeah, and there's a lot of like philosophy that also goes into it, and ways of people characterizing others.
The shadow guy. I forgot his name though.
It's not Shikaki. Oh man, I'm sitting here watching through it again, right? Shikamaru.
Yes, Shikamaru. Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters.
And Asuma's the wife. Is Asuma the wife or the master?
Asuma is his master who has little blades, who died.
Yeah. I can't remember his dad's name. It's not brought up a lot. There's a lot of philosophy involved in there. When they're talking about, hey, the way that people move, they personalize them, characterize them. They learn a lot about who they are based on it, how they play, and learning about the village and all that stuff. Do you think there's any of that stuff that goes into chess? For some people, maybe?
Like when you get to higher levels, sort of yes, sort of no. Like you can use that as an analogy to try to help people understand, but like computers are the best chess players in the world. No human can beat a computer. Computers win at everything, and they do none of that. They just do math. It's like, yeah, math done. So you can use that to try to help people understand, but it's not really a fundamental aspect of chess at all.
Yeah, I've noticed that like a lot of wartime generals, a lot of them played chess. A lot of these old presidents and world leaders in various time periods, a lot of them play chess. So I've always kind of wondered if there's any of that goes into it.
Instead.
I'm more of a World of Warcraft guy, but I used to be a StarCraft fan.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I was big in the StarCraft, man, for a while. StarCraft, Diablo 1, Diablo 2, all that good stuff.
I think those are good analogies for war, better than like chess. Chess doesn't give you a good analogy for war because you have resource management, trying to get resources to the front line, trying to protect your back ranks, dealing with the fog of war. So StarCraft does a good job of a introduction to how to manage a war.
And a lot of MDK as well.
What does that mean?
Murder, death, kill.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on air or not. Hopefully that's okay. We're not using it in a bad way. We're describing something.
As long as you don't mention the vaccine, we're probably fine. You can just anything else. Vaccine and pedo priests. Those are like the two topics you're not allowed to talk about.
James actually mentioned that vaccines and the insurrection on the Capitol. Were both topics that you can't really hit.
Yep, stupid, like just algorithm leftist bullcrap.
I wonder why that is. Like, even if you're say in agreement that this both like the vaccines are a great thing, or even if you're in agreement that the Capitol that was an insurrection, I wonder why that.
Because
both sides are kind of censored.
It's because money. So people who pays the bills for YouTube or the ad people who buy ads on YouTube, and they don't want their ads placed on something negative because there's lots of studies that show if you place your ads on something that has a negative connotation, that negative connotation would be placed on your product, and so they
True.
won't pay for them if they're put on those kinds of topics because it has the opposite effect of what they want, which leads to this biasing factor of like anything that the advertisers don't want is now off limits to talk about.
Okay. Yeah, very controversial stuff there. I myself am vaccinated. I got vaccinated for personal reasons. I don't tell anyone else to get vaccinated. I'd say, hey, looks like the science is behind it. Looks good. I picked mine out. I waited a year. Wanted to make sure myself felt good about it. Went and done it. I'm fine. Feel very healthy.
I got
But
paid to
that's
do
another
it.
one. You got paid to do it?
Yeah, there's the local place near here offered like $25 for each version you got. $25 gift card to Target. All right, I'll take it. $25. Give me.
Yeah, I thought to myself, hey, I'm a relatively healthy individual. If I were to get this, there's a high likelihood I'm going to be just fine. But at that time, I was coaching mixed martial arts, so I'm around big crowds of people, which leads me. I'm also a maintenance guy, handyman that helps a lot of local people. So I end up in elderly people's homes, and thought maybe I can help protect them if nothing else.
But I
But
did
that's
want to
another.
comment on that a little bit. I think that instead of trying to like moralize and force people into do it like the government did, I think you should just pay them. Just pay people to get it. And I think that would be better than like trying to force them to get it or lock them out of things. Just pay them to get it. We should pay them to vote too. Pay people to vote, and that'll get people to vote.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope the people do come out and vote as well. What do you think about this indictment coming up, man? What are your opinions on this? I got a lot of strong feelings on that one.
I think it's interesting that they're going after him for like the least important crime that he's committed.
I agree. I agree.
But it's the one that they can convict him on. So they go after him for the something that just doesn't matter instead of something that does matter, like his tax evasion, his finance manipulation, his fraudulent university, his fraudulent companies. Like those would be things that he legitimately should go to prison for. Paying Stormy Daniels, like it doesn't matter. Like just have him pay back the money. Like say he used campaign funds to pay off Stormy Daniels. Like, okay, send them a bill for the money he spent and just give it back to the campaign. There you go. Problem solved. You can all go home now.
Yeah, my thing also is these this doesn't seem to be something that keeps him from running as president. It doesn't seem like anything that keeps him from becoming the next president.
Well, if he gets convicted of
And
a felony, he's can't be president.
oh yeah, that's right, because they're pushing the federal side of it, the campaign
Finance fraud.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah, but it's really looking like it's gonna cut down to a misdemeanor thing if anything at all, and I imagine this is gonna go on for a very long time.
Probably. But since Cohen got convicted of it, it's already a crime. So the crime bar has already been met legally. And there's that quote from, I think it was Seneca or something, where he said there was a big, or Plato, it was Plato and the crime of, it was some big court case that Plato was writing about. He said, who benefits? And he was defending some guy, and the guy was an intermediary for somebody else. And the who benefits was the somebody else. And so that's how it got the blame shifted to the ultimate beneficiary of the crime. And so who benefits in this case was mostly Donald Trump. Cohen got paid, so he got benefited, and Stormy got paid, so she benefited, but the ultimate benefactor was Trump, and so he's ultimately culpable for the actions, especially since he paid back Cohen. So it's pretty much cut and dry. He's guilty, and he's probably going to get convicted of it.
Yeah, I don't know about the conviction part. It does look like the bar has already been set on it, as you said. But the man's managed to beat a lot of things. So it looks like it's tough to convict almost any of these individuals. But it does look like, maybe he did it, likely did it. And I don't really care about it, honestly, either. It's not something that affects me or my life or my thoughts on the individual. So I just think it's all ridiculous. I'm right there with you on that one. Um, yeah, it all seems crazy, and it's making headline news everywhere. The thing is that even people like you and I, who likely disagree with Trump in a lot of areas, um, are still, hey, this is dumb. This doesn't seem okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think that politicians are focusing on the wrong things, that none of which matters at all. It's all irrelevant. Like there was a study done on public approval ratings of certain policies and how that affects the likelihood of a bill being passed in Congress and the Senate. And for things that there is 0% approval on, nobody in America wants it, has a 30% chance of being approved by Congress. And for things that everybody wants, 100 to 80 to 100% of all people in America want, there's a 32% chance of it being passed by Congress. So Congress doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks. Nobody doesn't. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And so they pay attention to nothing about the public, nothing about what actually helps people. They're all in it for their own interests, partisan politics. They don't do anything to help, even though there's things we could obviously do to instantly help millions of people all around the country. They just don't do it. And they don't care to do it because they're more interested in playing the political game than actually helping people. And so I think
Yeah.
it's most of politics is a waste of time. They're all idiots and they should all be fired.
What would be do you have any ideas on what might be a better system, or do you think we just
Well,
need new
the
people?
system is fine. Well, sort of the system is fine. Like we need to get rid of money in politics, get rid of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is a big problem. Like the only reason the Republicans are still have any power at all is because of gerrymandering and gaming the system. They've lost the popular vote everywhere for a while now. They just don't have any say.
Unless you're
Um,
DeSantis.
Santa's, yeah. So the gerrymandering, which sways elections towards minority positions to keep people in power, is wrong. Lobbying money in politics is wrong. We should just have some kind of a policy that things that are done in Congress must be approved by the people. There needs to be referendums. We can say the people vote for this, just bypass Congress. Now that we have the internet and things, we can literally just do that. The UK did that, and there are lots of things we can do that for. Like
That's a great idea.
we can do legalized marijuana. We should do that like immediately
Yeah.
everywhere in
Yeah,
the country.
immediately.
No one should be in prison for that. It should be retroactive. So anybody who was in prison for a marijuana crime should just be released immediately and paid compensation for being in prison. We need to make prisons actually good. Like Swedish prisons work, our prisons don't. Our prisons make people more criminal, not less criminal. So we need to implement
Right.
criminal systems that actually work. Education systems, there's dozens of education systems around the world that actually do significantly better than us. We're like 34th in education, even though we have the
Yeah.
most money, which is
Yeah, I heard
dumb.
that recently. I
So we
actually
just,
read a study on that as well. Our education system kind of failing.
yeah, so we just implement, hey, there's systems over here that work. Why don't we just copy them? Problem solved. Like
Yeah.
healthcare systems. Our healthcare system is absolute garbage. There are healthcare systems that are like very privatistic, like Singapore system, one of the best in the world. We can just copy theirs, and it's like a Republican system. Well, it's fine, do that. Or we can do single payer healthcare like everywhere else that's in the Western world, and those work phenomenally. Um, we should get rid of the patent laws. Patent laws are absolutely garbage. Like the fact that epinephrine, you have a patent on it. It's one of the easiest drugs to make. Sold for $30 in Mexico, sold for $300 here. Complete garbage. We need to just like
Yeah.
give it to organizations, be able to copy it and sell it themselves. That would be great. There's
Yeah,
lots of
I've
things
made
like
plenty of
that.
arguments in the past that I think that a lot of people are focused on the wrong things. They get too caught up within the Fox versus CNN. What's the most popular topic at the time? In various areas, and I think that's something that's would be more beneficial towards people if maybe we looked at taxation without proper representation. Like these congressmen and women that we're quote unquote voting in, which I shouldn't put that in quotes, but it looks like it works. But they're getting voted in, and these people don't have our best interests at hand, or maybe they do when they get in, and maybe something changes once they get there. I'm not sure, but it doesn't seem like we're being properly represented for the funds that we're putting in. I don't see how We pay taxes on pretty much every walk of life. Um, can't really state ownership of much. If you're still paying taxes on it, it seems a little odd. All this money goes into the system, and it doesn't seem to go to the right places.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. I think like another example is on the left, focusing on trans rights issues should not be a thing. Nobody at the federal level should have anything to say about trans rights issue. It's a less than 1% of the population. Focus on something that affects 60% of the population, like universal basic income or the earned income tax credit or college debt. Like no one should be talking about trans rights on the left. Like how about we focus on things that affect hundreds of millions of people, not
right.
hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't always say that I have the right answers on how to fix anything. I'm not sure. I'm
I do
honest.
all of
I'm
them.
honest about it and saying, hey, I'm not intelligent enough, not educated enough in these various departments to even try to come up with a plan on how to fix any of it.
Here's the plan: fund the IRS, make it illegal to what's it called? What's it? The IRS audits, make it illegal to audit anybody who makes under $75,000 a year. Fund the IRS, make them audit big people first,
Yeah, I think that would work.
starting with
I mean,
the Department of Defense.
proper auditing as well.
Audit the Department of Defense. Start with that.
Yeah, so I'm a veteran. I spent just over 6 years in the U.S. Army. I served twice in Iraq. Almost 23 months of my life were spent there. At one point, I was doing mixed martial arts through my whole time. I got injured at one point. I got put in the supply department for a few weeks, kind of a light duty ordeal. And I got to see the hand receipts for a lot of the things we were making purchases on, the amounts that we're paying for these things. And something I took away from it is down to a little thing. So number two pencils. When we would buy number two pencils for the supply department, they couldn't be labeled number two, but they were still coming from the number two factories, warehouses, whatever, manufacturers. And whereas you or I can walk into, say, our local store, whatever store, and we can buy a pack of 5 number two pencils for like $1. The U.S. government was paying close to $10 for a pack of number 5 pencils, and I always found that really really odd. And then if I were to think about it, and we're producing jets and tanks and artillery and all these various things between. If a pack of number two pencils could be, could have 1,000% inflation on them, what could something like that be inflated to? I have no idea. I don't know those numbers, but I do know that a pack of 5 number two pencils was almost $10.
Yeah, we need a federal formulary so the government says we're going to pay the lowest prices for all these products and not overspend just to stimulate economic growth for certain rich people who buy. Like, it's completely a waste of time.
Yeah, I've always said that it's definitely a military industrial complex. The war makes various people money, lots and lots of money, and that seems to be where our money goes to. And it seems like if we were to track several of these politicians, it looks like they do get heavily embedded by being able to have the finance departments or whoever get said contracts with the number two pencil factory or the American Eagle factory that produces ammunition. Let these contracts come in, and it seems like these people are the ones willing to back their campaigns and make the right friends in the right places.
Yeah, money in politics. That is not useful. We need to put a cap on advertising and make advertising like the British advertising, where it's completely constrained, and make it formal debates, no buying ads on TV, make people actually have conversations where they can present alternative ideas of what they should do and have them hold to those, so that they have to legally pass the laws that they said they were going to pass in their campaign. And if they don't, they're convicted of a crime, or at least they have to try to, or something. Rather than just saying they're going to pass things and never do it. Get rid of omnibus bills, so you have to pass one law at a time that actually says exactly what you want it to say. Get rid of state bird bills, like you just no, we don't need you making laws about state birds. I don't care. Make laws about homeless people.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely need a plan for some of this stuff. And a minute ago, you said something about allowing the people to vote on
Referendums. Yeah.
referendums, laws, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something I've never thought of, but it's something I definitely agree to. Um, I still think I like to believe that we do have one of the best systems, the better systems rather. If our congressmen and women were doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's representing the areas that they're supposed to represent in their best interests. I think that that's a great idea if it's done correctly. And I would have to agree to you. Take the money away from it, make them have to actually get our votes by doing the right things.
Yeah, I think we should have a science-based system. The evidence says we should do this. We should do this, and start it on a small scale, make sure it works, and then expand it slowly. And that's the way every policy should work. Say science says this, do this. We implement it on a small scale in a bunch of areas. As it grows, we implement it more and more and more. It's not that hard. It's really easy. It's like we already have systems in other countries that we can just literally copy and paste into our country. What are you doing?
Yeah, you and I can have this conversation. It makes me think of an earlier conversation here where I was bringing up people's distrust in the government, and where I think it leads people who don't know how to research topics for themselves. I think it easily leads them down these rabbit holes, and I think that it's a portion of how we end up getting extremists on both sides.
I think most people don't know how to research. I don't think that's a problem we're going to solve, or that we even should try to solve. I don't think most people have time to research. Most people have jobs and have families. They don't have time to research. That's why I think we should have like debates, formal debates, where you're not getting your information from Fox News. That's very partisan and just telling you what you want to hear. You have to get the information when there's a combating information source right next to it, and you have to listen to the arguments. I think that's a better way to gain information than to just look for it. Because if you look for it, you're just going to find what conforms to your biases.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to research stuff and be objectional. Maybe is that what you're saying?
Objective, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely seems that way. Somebody, I was recently having a conversation with someone else, and they were saying, they brought up the topic of, you know, what was it? The universe has to be uh, created by something because this number and this number and this number and the pi of this number and this number all equal all this stuff, and then the pyramids and all this stuff gets thrown into it. And I told him, I say, a lot of people go out and buy a new car. If you go out and buy a new car, generally speaking, you don't see many of your cars before you buy the car. You buy the car, you see the car every day. Now you go out, you drive, and you see a lot more of your car. It wasn't that the cars weren't there in the first place. It's that now you're looking for a certain thing. Your eyes approach a certain thing, and that's what's going on there.
Yeah, psychological biases play a huge role in decision making, and anchoring biases, loss aversion biases. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of biases people don't realize that they have when doing things that affect them in very negative ways. So like there was one study done on judges that if you mention death to judges, they're more likely to quadruple the fine that they're going to convict for the exact same crime. Same if they don't have a sandwich, or they don't have lunch, or they haven't gotten any sleep. These things can significantly affect the psychology of people, which has an effect on their decisions and what they do in their job. And recognizing this as part of science can help us to design workspaces in order to accommodate the emotional needs of the individual so they can do the job better, which is something we should be doing, which we are not. Like there should be no solitary confinement. It should not exist. It just makes people insane and more criminal. It's not a thing that should happen.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem humanitarian, that's for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I know that our criminal justice system isn't working out. I know that that imprisonment doesn't seem to be solving much. It seems like people are coming out and being placed into a population at a different time that's advanced in a different way that they don't fit into, and there doesn't seem to be any reform there. That's for sure. So earlier you spoke of universal basic income, right?
Yep.
That's the right terminology.
Yep.
It seems like we're going into this. Well, we've been going into it. A new time of artificial intelligence, AI. It's the big hot topic at the moment. Um, and I was having a conversation with the wife about it, and this does seem like something that's going to be able to replace all sorts of people in different positions in various ways, and it's going to be better financially for companies to be able to utilize it. Um, we're seeing everything. Everybody's been seeing the kiosks at the local McDonald's or the self checkouts here and there. Um, and now I want to say it was McDonald's actually has their first fully operational
Taco Bell.
uh, Taco Bell, fully operational, where everything's being created in there without humans
Yep.
being involved directly.
And there's stores, I think it was Amazon, Target, I think it did that a few times. In California, I think there's a couple of stores like that. Yeah. The solution there, like in trucks, we should be able to do it at trucks. Tucker Carlson had a really interesting take on that. He was on with Ben Shapiro, and he said that he would ban self-driving trucks because he wants to save the jobs. I was like, okay, that's very not Republican of you, or sort of classical Republican of you. I like that. And I don't think we should do that. I think that's a terrible idea. I think that technological progress is the one thing that's moving humanity to save it. So what we should do is we should accommodate technological progress, just like we did when cars were invented. When cars were invented, people are getting run over by cars all the time. So what we did was we installed streetlights, so gave them crosswalks, so you can cross at this location, that way you don't get run over as much. And we installed lines on the roads to know that cars can stay on this side and not this side. And so we can accommodate the technology and make it safer, rather than trying to ban the technology, because banning the technology never works. That is a stupid idea. It's the dumbest thing. It's never worked in the human history ever, not once.
Right.
And so
What we've done if someone would have banned the wheel.
Yeah,
Because
terrible idea.
we're not going to have people to push the wagon anymore, or carry the cart any longer. So we're going to displace 8 human beings that might carry the cart with 2 wheels.
Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to make, what I would like to do is a pay cap for CEOs and shareholders based on the number of employees they have. And employees would be expanded in this case to mean you can just hire a person to say, I need an employee, so you can sit at home and do nothing, and we'll pay you, and you're an employee. Congratulations. And so if we have a pay cap for CEOs and shareholders based on the number of employees, you could have every single job in your company done by an AI, but you're required to have X number of employees to pay yourself. So you're just going to hire random people on the street and say, hey, we need somebody to apply for the job. You can just sit at home and do nothing. We'll pay you. There you go. Now you have an employee. Your entire workforce is robots, and we have a UBI. Problem solved.
Yeah. I don't know how it's going to work. It definitely seems like something that's going to displace a lot of people that might not fit in certain areas or be educated in certain areas. It's going to put a lot of people staying at home, that's for sure. Which I think that COVID already kind of helped in that department by getting companies to allow people to be home and put them in positions to succeed from home. Like for instance, my wife works in an industry where she was at home 100% of the time, and found that she was able to do her job 100% of the time from home without going into any building or business or whatever. And I've seen now it's had a big impact when people went back to work, when they were required to go back to buildings and factories and whatnot.
And a lot of them were like, nah, not going to do this.
Yeah, they're super not comfortable with it anymore. It's like it never, like they weren't. Some of these people may have been doing it for 4, 5, 6, a long time, and going back to it seems like such a negative thing. Like, hey, we found out we're able to do this from home. Like, what are we coming back here for?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's improvements in the ability for people to have higher quality of work environments gives an advantage that they don't want to lose. After you give someone something because of loss aversion bias, losing it is a lot more emotionally difficult and straining. They're not willing to give it up as much.
So, okay, so we'll jump back topic again, get a little off course. So we're talking about people being displaced here, and you were saying, hey, these places should have to hire X amount of people in order for, I think you said the CEO to be paid a certain amount.
Yeah, pay cap
Um,
and for CEOs and shareholders. So it's in order to pay themselves more, they need to have more employees. So you're going to be within a cap. You're allowed to pay yourself this much money until you have this many employees, and then once you have more, you can pay yourself more. That way, if a company lays off 7,000 employees, then they have to cut back on the pay of the CEOs and shareholders. You guys don't get bonuses anymore. Shareholder profits are cut down, and so you need to have the employees to pay yourself more money.
so what would you imagine that people are going to do with all the free time? Like, what do you think that
Play video
where do you
games.
think humanity will be able to go?
Play video games mostly.
Play video games, hang out?
Yeah. Like I think that small percentage of them will try to start companies and do stuff. Most of it's going to be monopolized by AIs and computers, but they're going to have more time to explore and try stuff and watch TV, do what they want.
Yeah, I know that an earlier argument several years ago was that might bring back what was it? I'm not going to have the proper language for this. It might bring back art. People might
Oh, that's
be
a
able
terrible idea. Don't do that.
But the way that I'm viewing it now, years later, is that it looks like AI is doing the same art perfectly.
Yep. It's already better than most humans. 90% of humans at art. Better than all postmodernists at art.
Yeah, I guess it is. It's hard to replicate, brushstrokes and various things, but have an iPad.
That's easy. Brushstrokes are easy.
Had an iPad, and I'm on these different programs, but it looks like my brushstrokes were pretty freaking good on there. So I don't know. Maybe it's the textures. I am a sucker for archaeology and art and various things people were trying to represent with various pieces and whatnot. I'm a sucker for all that. I love walking into historical industries or historical downtown places and whatnot. But it's definitely looking like AI could. Well, those things don't work any longer, anyways. But AI could definitely replicate those things pretty well.
Yeah, for sure.
I
think the future is porn robots. Porn robots. It's gonna be phenomenal.
I think people are already working on that. I think that's been a thing for a while, huh?
Yeah, but they're terrible. I have like 7. No, just kidding. But I think that eventually we're going to be like pandas. Pandas are in the zoo, taken care of by humans. They're given food. They have an enclosure, get to do what they want, and they actually have to show the pandas porn to get them to reproduce because they won't do it themselves. And I think that's about what humans are going to be like. We're going to be pandas in an AI zoo.
Yeah, me and the wife were talking about Demolition Man. Have you seen Demolition Man? Wesley Snipes and all that stuff.
Long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. And intercourse was done through, what was it, like a machine, a headset.
Yeah, headset.
And he wanted to go the old fashioned way, and he was just blown out by this new tech for this stuff. And I could definitely see that being a possibility.
I think we're going to go more idiocracy
artificially
route.
I'm sorry?
I think we're going to go more the idiocracy route. Gatorade to feed the plants. Let's do it.
Gatorade to feed the plant. I'm not sure what this guy's asking. Stick Brisket. Hey, how's it going, man? Nice to see you here. He asks, what do you guys think about what Musk said about paying people that are displaced by autonomy?
I have no idea what Musk said. Elon Musk is a moron. Don't listen to anything Elon Musk says. That's my position.
I like Elon Musk, man.
No,
I like him.
No, complete failure. He's done nothing significant. He is known for inventing things that already exist. That's all he's ever done. He's done nothing new ever.
Seems to be like he's doing a lot of things better than some though.
What do you think he's doing better? Tesla is not better.
Cars.
It's all a lie. So self-driving cars are a lie. Self-driving cars are rated on a system like A1 to A5. A5 is actual self-driving. His are like A3. They're garbage. They don't work. It's a lie. He has to like literally put into the legal documents that this is not self-driving. You are not allowed to use this as self-driving. It's legally not self-driving. But he calls it self-driving in public because it gets people's attention. It's a scam. It's all a scam. Tesla stock is way inflated. That's why it's been dropping recently. Tesla stock is worth more than all of the other car companies in America combined, even though it makes only
Really?
1% of the
Didn't know that.
cars. Complete garbage, or it used to be back when it was really inflated. So yeah, it's garbage. It's absolute garbage.
What about SpaceX, man? I know we
Even
already had
more
rockets,
garbage. Even absolutely
he's
more
got
garbage.
the rockets, the reusable rockets, the first reusable
Which
rockets, right?
cost more than the kind that NASA were already using, take less payload, have no value or purpose whatsoever. It's complete waste of time and waste of money. There's no
Really?
Yep. Thunderfoot did a bunch of
I
great
can't
videos
say
on
that
this.
I've researched a lot into this, so I'm taking your word for it here.
Check out Thunderfoot's video. He does all the math, shows you the papers. NASA even says it costs more. There's no value in SpaceX.
So what are they paying for it for then? It's just one of those things they just throw the money at?
Yep. Government just threw money at it, did research because nobody else is building rockets because they don't need them. They're useless. We're not really doing anything in space anymore anyway. So it's just something government's throwing money at, just like the Hyperloop. A bunch of cities bought Hyperloops and paid for them for nothing. They don't work. They're a complete failure. Absolutely worthless.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of like the guy. I like a lot of what he says. It's fun to me. If nothing else, it's very fun.
Like when
It's
he
very
brought a
fun to listen
sink,
to.
when he brought a sink into Twitter.
A sink? No, I don't remember
Yeah,
this one. I don't recall it.
he bought
I'm very new
Twitter.
to Twitter, also.
Well, he bought Twitter, and when he was standing outside, he made one of his employees go buy a sink from a Home Depot and bring it to him so he could walk in the 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 door with the sink in his hands. There's a picture of him with the sink walking in with the sink. Um, it's like it's funny memes, but he has no actual intellectual value to contribute to anything.
I think the flamethrower thing was the one that was most fun to me. He makes the flamethrower, builds 10,000 of them, and he says, "Do not buy this." Apparently, like the website itself said, "Do not buy this. This is not a good thing." And still apparently sold 10,000 flamethrowers within 2 or 3 days or something.
Well, he could probably just put his piss up like Belle Delphine or bathwater or whatever. That's going to sell too because
That's
people worship
that was a
Elon
crazy
Musk.
one. I heard about that. It's pretty wild. Yeah, I don't know, man. It seems, I guess, again, I haven't researched any of this stuff.
Check
So
out Thunderfoot's YouTube channel on Elon Musk. Everything he's ever done is a lie. It's hilarious.
what are your thoughts on the electric cars? So we just talked about Tesla. You
Electric
said the
cars are
cars are
great.
garbage. They're A3.
Electric cars are great. Teslas are not the best electric cars, not the most efficient electric cars, not the cheapest electric cars. They're overhyped, and you're buying the label more than anything. But electric cars are very good and effective. We need to figure out better ways to be able to charge them, like because right now we're just using coal mostly. But electric cars are an improvement in a lot of ways.
So I know that one of the common arguments against electric cars currently is that, again, not a topic I've researched, not something I know much about, but the batteries. Apparently, when the batteries go out, what are we doing with the batteries? Batteries bad for the environment, so on and so forth. I've always said that I don't know what we're doing with the batteries. I can't imagine that being a great thing. However, I think that when there's more of an industry for something, people find solutions for things, and that as the industry grows, I think that people will find a way financially that makes them money to dispose of or reuse or whatever these batteries. But what are your thoughts on them?
Who cares? Like, recycling is a lie. What percent of this? Do you have a recycling bin?
I do not, but I used to recycle my cans and
Do you know what percent
stuff here and there.
of things we actually recycle of the stuff we put into recycling? Plastics.
I do not. I
It's
don't know.
5%. 5% of the stuff we put into recycling bins gets recycled. It's a complete lie.
Really, like everything?
Yeah.
From cans to whatever
5%.
plastics.
I think those are specifically for plastics. Of all the plastics we put in there, it's 5%. And so it's something that makes people feel good that doesn't really do anything, very little to help. It's just a lie. And so this idea that, well, what do we do with the batteries? Like, we're going to do with it the same thing we do with the plastics. We're going to throw them in the garbage. We do need to figure out a way to deal with garbage. But honestly, it's not that big of a deal because, like, what percentage of the Earth do you think humans occupy?
Very little, very
Yeah,
very
right,
little.
less than
Yeah,
1%. So we could dump like all human beings. We could take all human beings and put them in the Grand Canyon. All human beings who have ever lived, we wouldn't fill up the Grand Canyon. So we have
really.
plenty of
I know
places to
I've
put.
heard that argument with Texas that we could put everyone in the world in Texas in like a 2,000 square foot home or
Yep.
something,
Wait,
18 plus years old, and
two. Well, if we put them in a 2,000 square foot home, they'd be very squishy, jelly, because it's like my home is like a 2,000 square foot home. I don't think we can put all human beings in here, but yes. But yeah, we gave each of them a 2,000 square foot home. Yeah, but I think
yeah,
that yeah, we have plenty of places to put trash. Like we just put it all in Grand Canyon. It'll all fit in the Grand Canyon for another 1,000 years. We'll still have space in the Grand Canyon to put all trash. So I'm not too worried about that. Um, so it's not really that big of an issue.
the batteries would seem like something that would be a pretty bad for the environment, though.
Just like all
Um,
trash is. Trash isn't good for the environment, but it's not like it's going to be significantly worse than the other trash we have. Like I'm more concerned about uranium and nuclear waste poisoning. That's
right.
worse. So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the batteries aren't
easily
that big of a
worse.
deal. They're
Right.
bad, but they're
What
not
about
significantly worse
what
than
is
everything
it,
else.
cobalt or something like that? They have to mine for these batteries and the mining conditions and things like that to go into producing the batteries.
Well, that's the problem of the governments who, like in Cambodia, where they do that. Yeah, they don't have very very good laws in place to have ethical mining practices. Um, but that's not really the fault of the batteries. It doesn't make batteries bad because governments use their people in a manipulative way to make them. So I definitely think that we probably shouldn't use slave labor to do things. Probably not a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
idea,
yeah. Not a
but
cool idea.
it's not really an argument against the batteries. It's cobalt, not lithium. Lithium is a separate process. Cobalt is the one that's the bigger problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Again, very little research. I just see the big pits that everybody sees and different things that go across social media. Um, not one of those things I've really invested a lot of time into looking into, but um, yeah, I guess I've never thought of it that way. I know your best friend, Elon Musk, did make an analogy of being able to drop a cannonball out of a 747 flying through the air, whatever, and there's like whatever, a high percentage, extremely high percentage of that cannonball hits nothing and no one. So I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, like it's not even close. Like, of course not. Duh.
yeah, I think I've heard that we have small meters that land all the time, and that no one's affected by it. We don't know that it even landed. There's just not enough people to cover the ground. I've actually used the analogy before that I think we're more roaches on the planet than we realize, but there's still not enough of us to make that big of an impact.
Yep.
Um, so carbon monoxide, that's another one we're talking about, or goes back into the vehicle thing. What kind of impact do you think carbon monoxide has on the atmosphere right now? Climate change and all this good stuff.
Monoxide or CO2?
CO2, uh, carbon itself. Through vehicular stuff and whatnot.
Yeah, climate change. Mm, like, there's a lot of data on climate change, and there's some data that the amount of arable land will increase as climate change gets worse. So it could actually be a good thing for Western civilization that if we continue to allow climate change to happen, the amount of arable land that affects our regions will be more and better. Now it'll be less in Africa, it'll be less for poor nations. They're all going to starve and drown and die. But for rich nations, it would not be better for us, not worse. Obviously, it'll be worse, like weather swings, worse hurricanes, those kinds of things will be worse. But the estimated amount of people who will die from global climate change over the next 100 years is about 100 million. I think is the high end. Now, in 100 years, every human on the planet will be dead because we have an 80-year life expectancy. That's 117 billion people who are going to die in 100 years. And so if 100 million people is the max amount of people who are going to die from global warming in 100 years, that's nothing. It's 0.00 something percent of people. It's like that's not
Right.
really a big issue. And so I'm not as concerned about global warming. I don't really care. It's not a big deal. Even if we burned all of the fossil fuels, it wouldn't do that much potentially. It's like it's not really that big of a deal.
Right.
So I think that's the worry about climate change is overblown. There is definitely some small percent chance that everyone dies and we become Venus or whatever, but it's I don't really think it's that big of a concern.
Do you think it's by 2030, as some extremists seem to think?
Only if there's some super excessive effect in the atmosphere that we don't really expect. I think it's unlikely. No, it's definitely not going to affect anything by then unless magic happens.
I'm not sure what Brisket here, Sick Brisket, is alluding to, but he says, "Does America still have the most powerful military? Because if that
Yes.
happens, we will need it."
If what happens?
I'm not sure. Maybe he could type that in at some point. But yeah, I still say that America still has the most powerful military by far.
Yeah, it's not even close. But like if he's implying that mass migration or something, like yeah, that's a possibility. Like if there is global warming that does cause the people near the equator to starve, they're going to try to migrate to like America and whatever. And yeah, we might need to build walls or whatever to prevent them from invading potentially, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, it's definitely a possibility.
So on walls, what are your thoughts on immigration there?
I'm
And he said
from
yes, mass migration would be inevitable. Yeah. So I guess that's what he
well,
was talking
wouldn't
about.
well, possibly be inevitable. Like most of them probably wouldn't be able to make it because it's kind of hard to walk that far, especially in heat with no food. But yeah, mass migration, especially if people aren't getting food, or it's probably going to happen. I'm for merit-based immigration. I think that we should allow in people who are the most skilled people. And that's how you
Yeah.
make a country better. I don't think allowing in anybody is always a good idea.
Right.
Um, so I definitely wouldn't be for mass migration, especially because we can see the negative side effects it's had in Germany and those countries. Like, be very selective about the people we let in for sure, and don't let them ideologically shift the country too much because we know how much homogeneous countries do function better with less crime. Like Japan, one of the most homogeneous countries in the world, has some of the lowest crime ever. So
Right.
homogeneity is definitely a significant factor in keeping places stable. And so allowing in certain different groups, as long as they are willing to accommodate the economic and social values to some extent, is
Yeah.
important.
Be able to integrate successfully.
Chinese people and Jewish people, anywhere, let them in anywhere. They can do it. They'll do it. They'll be fine.
Yeah,
Islam, not so much. Probably not. Probably, I don't want to do that.
yeah, I agree. Going back to the military thing, so I have a bit of experience there. One of the reasons that I left the U.S. Army was because I didn't agree with a lot of the changes in what I would say is the caliber of the humans being allowed in and their mindsets. I don't have answers for it. This is all opinionated. So when I joined, we were under what we called the Red Book standards, which were more of your when you're going through basic training. You're yelled at, you're screamed at. Every now and then you might be touched, but not likely beaten up or something crazy. Um, you were woken up at the dead of night and so on and so forth, all sorts of crazy things. Um, and when you got through with basic training, you were told, after you become a quote unquote soldier for walking across the stage, you were told that all of this was in an attempt to mentally break you during this phase of your military training. Because if you couldn't successfully succeed here, then you're not going to be mentally capable in a wartime scenario if you were actually in a combat situation. And so when I was in my last year and a half or so of the military, we switched to what was called the Blue Book standards. This was around 2010. And in the Blue Book standards is when we started seeing um, there was basic training became much easier. You need to have 6 hours or so of unbroken sleep, and people shouldn't yell at you or call you names. Um, the PT standards were lowered. The guys that I got in for my last section that I led into Iraq, um, not they didn't handle things well. They weren't able to cope in certain situations very well. Um, Definitely seems to be uh, where society's moving towards. Be nice to everybody, so on and so forth, but it integrated itself into the military itself. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, moral progress definitely happens, and it's not a bad thing. Like, there's lots of militaries that are extremely effective that don't have mean drill sergeants. Like the Swedish military, and the Israeli military have mandatory military service for every person, and
Hmm.
they don't have the same kind of drill sergeants that are like known in what's it the movies that we see. Lee Sergeant Lee something, but yeah, we don't need that. We don't need any of that stuff. We can effectively train military soldiers without being mean like that. We can give them a full night's rest and be nice to them and still have them effective military soldiers. So I don't think we need the harsh training to have an effective military. Like, I like Sweden's and Israelis model for training very well. Like, they work extremely well. I think we should do that. We should probably have some kind of mandatory military service. South Korea also has mandatory military service. And so they have
Yeah,
very
yeah, I
effective
know about that.
military training that doesn't involve the same kinds of harsh things that we see in the movies. Mm.
See, my experience with this was just firsthand experience, and it was very limited. It was five Israeli soldiers. So it's not like I've got a big database of information, but my experience with them was that their basic training was really tough. That being in the Israeli army was really tough, and that they were uh, treated the way that I was just talking about through their basic training. But afterwards, it seems like their life was a lot easier as being once they're actually considered a portion of the Israeli army. It seems like their life was a bit easier, but their basic training was pretty rough.
I don't think so. Like, they do get full night's rest. They do get treated respectfully. Like, I don't think they're harmed psychologically in the same way.
I think that in a lot of the positions, I don't think it matters. Like, if you're joining and you're guaranteed to stay in supply, you're guaranteed. It's very unlikely you're ever going to see any sort of combat, or you're going to have to know how to use your rifle, spontaneously. If there's an extremely limited chance, I don't think that it matters. But from personal experience, and again, limited, this is me, myself, and situations I was in with a very limited number of people. Um, to the two individuals that I got through the new basic training program, we had incoming mortars in one situation, and this was a joint base Balad, Iraq. There were mortars almost daily. Fortunately, at that point, the ones shooting them were not using the right equipment. So a lot of these things were duds. They'd land, do nothing, or they'd entirely miss the entire post. They'd shoot over the post, never really hurting anyone. But it's constant thing. And a couple situations where we had them land close enough where there was, a huge blast or whatever, big booms. Um, we had one individual who would actually hide behind couches, and he actually cried for his mother. And again, limited. I got two guys, new people, you know, but that was a pretty daily experience that I would deal with these guys that I didn't deal with anyone before this. Anybody that went through a bit harsher basic trainings and situations. I think that the real stuff definitely requires a certain uh, mental fortitude.
Sure. But I don't think you need to be super harsh on them to get that. Like, I think
Yeah,
there are other ways to do that. I don't think the American military in its transition phase has gotten the right pattern to do that yet, but there are many militaries that do, that have the right pattern to be able to do that, and we just haven't
yeah,
figured it out yet.
yeah, they're definitely on a different track right now, and it seems like the oh man, I wish I could remember all these terms, but the rate of people like re-enlisting, staying in seems to be going up, but the rate of people coming in seems to be going down. Um, it from the people that I know that are still in, it seems like their lives have certainly become easier, um, better living conditions, standards, so on and so forth. So I think we're definitely moving in a positive direction in some ways there. But I guess maybe it's just an older mentality of I don't know how much I like the quote unquote softening when it comes to training and whatnot.
Well, all I care about is the effectiveness. I don't care about the method. And so if there's data that shows there's effective military ways that don't involve harsh training, then that's all that matters. Does the
Yeah,
data show it works? And if it does, then who cares?
right. Yeah, yeah, I agree there for sure. All right, T Jump. Well, I'm coming up on my time over here. It's been great having this conversation. I hope we can do it again sometime. I
Sure,
greatly
just
appreciate you coming on. You're the second guy I've had on here. I had James Hake. He's quite the character.
for
Had him on a couple weeks ago. Um, and yeah, man, I'm enjoying this stuff. I'm glad you were able to make it.
for sure. And just a quick shout out. I'm starting an atheist church, atheist religion, and definitely need funding. Looking for 2 to 4 million. Buy an apartment building, provide affordable housing, do all the things the government should be doing and churches should be doing, but aren't. So if you can support the atheist church, so that we can make a better world together. Something like that.
Yeah, I've heard you bring this up the last couple times you've been on certain things. Are you serious about this one
Yep,
or?
yep. I filed for my Minnesota employee identification number, so I got that done, and now I'm filing for 501(c)(3). So it's definitely a serious project I absolutely want to do, and I think that that's the best way to try to make a difference in the world is start a company and do the things you want to do yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm down with it. Anything that makes humanity a little better, a little easier. I'm always down for that.
Cool. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, and talk to you again sometime.
Yes, sir. Hey, thanks again, man. Hey, everybody. Have